If I look back 5 years ago, I would not even step on grass. I'll be like so afraid of insects as well as crawlies, and today I cannot believe that I'm doing forest bathing together with Kevin.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Wise and Shine. I'm your host Dawn, Aishi Budget Babe, and I have...
This is Alex Lowe. You can find me on socials, Alex Lowe Growth Mindset Coach. And we have with us today two friends actually, Kevin and Brenda. I'll save the time for them to introduce themselves later. But today's topic is on forest bathing. So for those of you who've never heard, or maybe you've heard about people talk about forest bathing, what exactly does it mean? Does it mean going into the forest, into the tropical jungle of Singapore? In fact, is there any tropical jungle in Singapore worth going into? So Brenda and Kevin will tell us more about that and exactly what it is, how we can add this into our daily life to help with our mental well-being and mental health. This is especially important for all of us corporate workers out there who are slightly stressed or maybe burnt out or to the point of depression. This is definitely going to help you. So I will give the time now to Kevin and Brenda to talk a little bit more about themselves. Tell us who you are and what you do. Kevin, maybe you can start.
Sure. Well, thanks very much, Alex. My name is Kevin Cottam. I'm a global nomad, and I am a professional speaker and the pioneer of the nomadic mindset. And that is one of the aspects of what I do. I've been living in Singapore since 2011, and I'm Canadian.
Thank you. Very happy to have you with us today, Kevin. Brenda?
I'm an emotional and mental wellness coach where I bring emotional wellness to corporates as well as individuals. So I do a lot of coaching with individuals, helping them to get clarity. And of course, we do forest bathing.
Thank you. Good to have you here. And Kevin, maybe you can share with us, where did this forest bathing originate from? I know it's from Japan, right? How did you come to know about it? And when you introduced it to Singapore, what was the interest like when you first started?
Yes, thanks very much. So forest bathing started in around 1982 in Japan, and the father of it is Miyazaki. And what did he do? What was the reason for starting it? It was because there was a whole issue with burnout and stress within organizations, and they were thinking that people were becoming very, very disconnected from themselves and also from nature. And that nature is one of the healers, great healers of our not only mental, but our physical, spiritual, emotional health. And all of this gives us energy, depending on which way you look at it. But it was really designed to go into your senses. Forest bathing actually is about going into the forest, tech-free, and that's really quite crazy.
So you leave your mobile phones at home or you have it in your bag? And
you have them in your bag, and we invite people not to bring them out and to have a tech-free detox for a few minutes, for a few hours in actual fact. And also it is in silence. And we invite people then to explore nature. And we do it very slowly. It's not done in a very fast walk. And we allow people to discover, explore, expand, and see what emerges for them. And I think that it's really vital for today. And one of the reasons that I believe that is extremely important, because we have become very disconnected individuals. We have become very focused on our organizations and our work and perhaps family, but the disconnect between all of that has not allowed us to be whole. So we become less whole, and through forest bathing and how that has come about, it's allowed us to start to become more whole again. And we'll share with that a little bit more about that later. But, how did it come about for us was that a couple of friends of mine, Andy and Renu, we had been going a lot into forest during COVID and to explore. And during Mental Health Month in 2023, we decided to take people forest bathing. And so that's when we discovered it, and it became very familiar for a lot of people at that point, and they really enjoyed it, and they loved the feeling of what it gave them and the sense of what it would be for them, not only just now, but also into organizations, into family, and leading forward. So it's been very beneficial for everyone. And I have to say that it's really shifted myself to be more regularly into nature. And it's turned around not only my mental health, but also just how I want to be in life.
And you know what's really interesting, if I could add, is that if you take a look at forest bathing in kanji, Japanese, in the kanji words, right, 3 trees here, which is like 3 wood, and the second,
Sankamu.
yeah, and you have wood as well, which is the second character, and also the third character, which is actually water plus valley. So it is by no surprise it's called forest bathing in Chinese, and it's actually Chinese and as well as kanji. Yeah, and even for myself, if I look back 5 years ago, I would not even step on grass. I'll be like so afraid of insects as well as crawlies, and today I cannot believe that I'm doing forest bathing together with Kevin.
So how do you deal with the insects?
Repellent.
Well, I used to be so afraid even looking at a book. If I see like picture of a worm, I would just drop the book. Okay, I always remember one of the incident when I was in one of the bookstores. But yeah, if we understand that the forest is like a representation of what's inside us, what is on the outside is like on the inside. If you look at the forest, which is like the representation of the lungs of the earth, right? The trees, the soil, everything is like our inner world. So when I start to understand and start to appreciate everything around nature, I start to be okay with the insects, with the crawlies. And I still remember, I think a month ago in our last walk, we actually spotted like a double hit worm. I've never seen that. It's a carnivore worm, right? Last time I'll be like freaking out, running away, and I was actually there taking a picture of it. And of course, we saw a very luminous, bright blue snake. So yeah, it's just really working on the inside. And that's why we do forest bathing. We help people get into the forest and just giving them that time and space to just be with themselves, a lot of reflection.
I've got a question. So while we're on the topic of science and research studies, I know when I was young, my parents used to make me look at greenery, especially if I watch too much TV or like look at the greenery. It's good for your eyes. I do that to my kids, but I don't really understand why. I just replicate, right? And I have noticed that for a lot of us in cities, we have a higher incidence of poor eyesight, elevated cortisol levels, stress levels, and more worryingly, we're falling sick faster than the generations before us. Have there been any studies that have attributed whether forest bathing could be preventive or even healing for people who have already contracted some sort of modern city disease, like for instance, cancer patients or anyone with a critical illness, for instance?
I mean, there are scientific studies that have been done on a variety of these aspects of how it improves your health, simply because it lowers that cortisol and it allows you then to have a better heart rate. So, in that fact, it stops the stress response, but at the same time, it for people that may have heart problems and whichever, it allows them to be able to work much better. Cancer, I'm not sure on that particular aspect. Just that. Being in nature just shifts you considerably. You talked about your parents asking you to look at pictures. That is one of the things that we can do if we don't have forests near us, is that we can look at animals, we can look at forests, we can look, and it already starts, and science has already shown this, that it will lower the cortisol just by looking at it and having it around you. So other aspects that you can have if you are not familiar with and have forests to go to is to go to a curated park. But curated parks are a different type of forest in its way, because all of those plants are put there for a reason. And if you use it as a metaphor, is that all of us in the world, all of us are different. And so we're all plants. And if we think about that, or trees, or whichever, and we bring something to the conversation, and it also brings that beauty as well, that inclusiveness, that diversity. And when we go forest bathing, right, is we like to bring in this connection with organizations in many ways. So we will have a theme. Sometimes the theme is around intention. Sometimes it's around diversity and inclusion. Sometimes it's around creativity. And so we look at nature then from, say, creative. When you go into nature, can you imagine all the creative aspects of what nature is? I mean, the different lines, the veins and leaves and the colors and the different colors and shades that are all coming together. I mean, it's phenomenal. But in our contemporary world, what do? we forget about this.
We
just
don't
go,
notice it.
And so your eyes, yes, become better because they have more openness. They get to see green, which is a very important color.
And maybe if I could share, right? If you just look at your bedroom, imagine if you have a kid and your walls in the bedroom is actually red color. Just imagine the kid sleeping in a room which is all red walls. How does that naturally feels like? You already feel that hyperactivity or maybe that aggression that can come with it, versus if you have a room which is white color, and likewise the color green, right? So symbolically speaking, if you can understand that, why do we choose a red Ferrari versus a purple Ferrari, right, for advertisements? It's the same thing. Why do we look at green then? Green naturally is a color. I'm not a color therapist, but just green itself, we know is a soothing color in a way, calming color, you know? And I'd like to also touch on one very interesting story that we've had. I cannot speak about cancer, but let's just talk about someone going through grieving or a depression. And we have a attendee who joined us. She was going through a grieving process. All right. And when she walked, I think there was slight drizzle that day, just very slight. And you know, if we look at the rain, the drizzle, of how it actually cleanses and washes away, right? Whether it's bringing away the debris or whatever you see, it's the same. You know, life every day we wake up, there's a start, there's a rebirth, right? And for her, you know, she started seeing that cycle. Everything is impermanent, right? There's a born and there's a day that we go, and I think that actually gave her closure. So she shared, wow, that was very, very healing for us, for her. It touched us, of course.
So nature is that metaphor of life, and
Yes.
by going forest bathing, because you are tech-free, you go slow and it's over a period of time, it gives you that time and space to reflect and be able to use nature to understand yourself a little bit better. Right.
So, you know, we have one attendee. He's a businessman, right? He came and joined us. And he's usually very chatty, you know, quite an extrovert, very outgoing. And he said, oh no, I'm going to walk in silence. How can I do that? And he did walk in silence, and it was a struggle for him the first time, right? And he was like, what do I do? What do I do? Oh no, okay, I'm going to talk to the animals, you know? And he didn't distract any of us, of course. And the interesting thing is, he came back the second and the third time, even though it was uncomfortable for him for the first time. And by the time he came back the third time, we could see a natural shift in him of how he was just able to just naturally be more calm. Because we're so used to just being on the go, busy talking, you know, we haven't had given us that chance to actually just be with us. And that's why we offer forest bathing, for us to just have that pause time to reflect, to just observe your own senses, to just observe how you even feel. You know, are you using your left or your right foot more? Do you know that when we walk in silence, not even in silence, right? But when you walk, after an hour or so, if you actually observe your fingers, you realize, hey, it's actually a little bit more plump, it's smoother, because it's good blood circulation. Yeah, so if you're listening, right, go observe that when you walk.
Did you check in with this businessman or this gentleman on why he came back the subsequent times?
He just wanted to experience again.
So he had a
Yeah.
good feeling, which is
Yeah.
why he was coming back.
Although
for
it was
more.
difficult, it was struggle, right? And he shared openly, because at the end of our walk, there's always sharing. And he shared openly with all of us. Cannot keep quiet, right? Yeah, but it was so supportive, and he, you know what, he actually gave himself the opportunity. You know, it's like the car keeps going, and if the car doesn't stop, it's going to break down one day. So I think he appreciated that process as a businessman himself. You know, he saw the importance of it, although it was uncomfortable. But he allowed himself to, okay, let's experiment that again. And for the third time.
And how long are each forest bathing episode or walk?
About 2 hours or so.
Yeah. We usually start about 8:30 in the morning, and we walk for approximately 2.5 hours, and then we go and have some makan together. And what we really we start off with the beginning, middle, and end. And so the beginning is really about introduction, about what forest bathing is, what is the theme, and what do they want to get out of this, why are they there, and just in a couple of words. And then we go, and once we say, okay, we're now in the sanctum, no more words, all right? And I call it the sanctum because it really is a sanctuary. And it's a sanctuary not only in the forest, but it's a sanctuary for ourselves to be one. And then following that, we will get together and we'll do a little bit of meditation, and we'll do some sharing again. And what did they take away from it? And then we come back, and on the exit, we allow people to start talking again. And it's interesting because people sometimes they don't want to talk it still. They want to keep that. And I ask the people, and at times I say, so how is your breathing now and before you came in? They say my breathing is completely different than when I came in, because it has gone deeper and it is more wider. I want to share another story that we had. You were talking about science and then the mental health. There's a lot of people that are shy and introverted. Well, this one time we stand in a circle, because that's very nomadic, is bringing this together. And there were two people. One person said, I'm shy. And so that was like an alert,
Yeah, I didn't even speak at all.
And then we went to another person, and she was standing next to her sister. And when it came to her, she slightly stepped back outside the circle. And she started to speak, and I could not hear her. And I went closer, and I said, oh, thank you very much. And I thought, you know what? I need to keep an eye on these two, because I just don't know what's going on and what's happening. So I did. And when I watched this one that we couldn't hear, she went and she hugged the tree. She looked up. She looked all around. You could sense her whole being was changing. At the very end, when we gathered together, I came to her, and she was the last person. Well, first of all, the other person said that I'm shy. She said, this is perfect for shy people. We don't have to talk. And the other person, she spoke, and it was like so strong in her voice. It was amazing. And she said to us afterwards, because I said, what was it? And she said, nature doesn't judge me. Nature allows me to be calm. I can speak to nature. It gives me so much more healthiness to my life. It brings confidence to me.
And she said, nature allows me, I can choose who I want to speak to. It was so powerful.
Yeah. So, these are the shifts that can happen. And she said to me afterwards, she says, I love going into nature just so I can do this and to be like this. And then I said, well, how can you take that forward into everyday life? To see your forest is where you are.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying Wise and Shine so far. I'm your host Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and for us to continue to do this show so that you become a tad bit wiser every week, you gotta like, share, subscribe, help us beat the algorithm, but even more importantly, if you can, comment in the comment section below, let us know your thoughts and also some questions that you would love us to answer. Yep, now back to the show.
Nice story, right? Yeah. I want to ask also, so for people who say that I already go for a walk in the park, I go for a walk in the woods on my own, how is this different from joining a group session that you guys organize for forest bathing?
So I've had friends, right? And they'll tell me, oh, I walk. And I say, how do you walk? Oh, I have my earpiece on, I'll be walking.
Listening to a podcast.
Listening to podcasts. Okay. So I said, and so she comes to me for coaching, right? And I said, okay, you walk with your earpiece. So most of the time, where are you at really? What's the purpose of the walk? You're just really walking. But have you given yourself that time to introspect? Or have you really observed that? What's really on the ground? Did you notice those beautiful fallen flowers that looks like beautiful aisles of pink? Have you observed that? I said, oh, no. So when you walk and if you have your phones or, oh, I see this, I can't wait to take picture of this, take picture of that, no one stops you from doing so. So you are caught in, there's a social media thing, right? That, okay, when I walk, oh, what's good? I got to take pictures, I got to listen to my podcast, and a lot of distractions too. So coming together as a group, it allows us, I would say maybe a little bit of
accountability,
that
someone is watching you. Keep your phone in your bag.
No phones. and we let you observe. How does that feel like to even be without the phone, right?
I think Alex, along that line is that people go. I watch people go into Macreechie or wherever, and they're and I'm going, do they really know where they are? Are they absolutely observing or hearing anything else but the right? And it upsets me actually, because this is a perfect time for them to reconnect. And they may be reconnecting on a different level, but the level that we need to reconnect today, as you know, is to get deeper into the senses, because we are so desensitized. I ask some people when I do trainings and whichever, what was the first thing that you saw today, or heard, or felt? And they go, they have a hard time to know, because we do not register anymore. We're so outside instead of inside. And not to say that you have to be inside all the time. We have to have this balance, right, of the homeostasis of in and out, in and out, in and out. But everything is starting from inside. Interesting, you like this, I believe, is that when I was, so in my leadership journey, teamwork that I do with organizations, I take them to the forest. And when I do something around agreement, with them developing their agreement, I take them to a curated forest or a garden. And I ask them to examine what this is. And one of the guys said to me, I noticed that part of this curated garden is not in a straight line. I said, yeah. And what does that mean for your organization? That things are not in a straight line. Not every decision, everything that we choose, or the creativity is not in a straight line. We have to go bob and weave. We have to turn and curve. And to allow that. So the teaching of that curated garden has given them another opinion of how them in the team, the leadership team, are all plants, different plants, but how do we come together to create that garden so that it's whole and that we can therefore lead our teams? So I think, there's a huge reference to organizations and a huge instance to a mental effectiveness, because that's what the research has shown, that the more that you have clarity, and then by going into nature, you gain clarity through that reflection that you're talking about. And also, therefore, that allows performance to increase, because you are rested, you have more ideas, more thoughts, you're more expansive instead of narrow in your thinking. And which I come back to a quote from my research with a nomadic mindset, is think vastly, act narrowly. So that we start to think vastly in all the aspects. And so, yeah.
So if we look at Sun Tzu, the warrior strategist, right, who's never lost a war in 40 years.
Out of war.
Yeah, out of war, exactly right. So he said, you got to know when and when not to fight the war. If you know that, you win many wars, right? So actually in his teaching, it's a lot about self-care. Because if he cannot take care of himself, how can he take care of other people? So same thing when we take our, whether it's corporate or individuals into the forest, he brings in a lot about nature into his war strategies, and likewise for corporates as well, right? If you cannot take care of yourself as a leader, how do you lead yourself? If you can't lead yourself well, how can you lead others? So there's a lot we can learn from nature and bring that in when we talk about self-care, linking to emotional and mental wellness.
Actually, hearing both of you guys speak on this topic, as a parent myself, I can imagine, aside from it being useful for organizations or individuals, even for children, it might be beneficial to get them started on it early.
So we had one attendee who had an autistic kid that joined us. He was about teen, I think about 15 years old or so. All right. So we were like, okay, I hope he can do the walk with us, because it's a bit of a high and low terrain. And it's going to be about 2 hours. And he came out and he was so calm, and the mom was like surprised. And he actually told mom that he really enjoyed the walk. And he was just able to stay really calm and quiet. Can you imagine just really keeping quiet for 2 hours, almost 2 hours in silence, right? Because at the end we have certain activities to anchor the learning. So that was actually very healing. And we started getting a request as well from school for autistic kids that wants to do the walk.
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud, like, if I brought my kid on such a walk, I don't know if he can stay silent for 2 hours. But it does seem like, encouraging them to think about observation skills, looking at nature and just calming them down. Because a lot of the kids, they're very like, all the time, right? They're always hyperactive and always on the go. And there's nothing really in modern life to help tune them back except to sleep.
And it's also very tech driven, right? Yeah, it's also very tech driven because when they play games and what have you, it's always quick, fast.
Exactly. They need to learn how to disconnect from all that technology. Nate, when you watch this when you're older, you know what I'm talking about.
So it's really, you see, it's creating interest for them when you go into the forest and of course, Singapore, we don't have that many forests, but it's really bring their attention away from the tech and you go into the forest. It's just something that you don't really see all the time. So, I mean, like we spotted, I'm always intrigued. I mean, till now, having done it for 2 years, I'm always excited, always looking out for what I call the dancing queen because it's like a little white, exactly right. It's like a little white, like a fur ball insect that actually dances and moves. And it's a rare sighting, but we've spotted it 2 times.
In 2 years.
In 2 years, yeah.
It's a worm.
No, it's like an insect.
It's an insect.
But it's so cute, like little furs coming out, right? And then if you look up, you'll actually see a monitor lizard up on the palm tree, having a sun bath. So these are things that kids don't see, if you're on your tech all the time, if they're at home. Yeah.
I think one of the things that also is impressive for a lot of people is that you notice how we don't ever look up because we're always looking down now, is that we don't see the whole expansiveness of things. And so we invite people to say, look up, and you'll see a magic in the air. And especially, when you bring it to the relationship of nature and humans, is that when you look at canopies, is that all the canopies do not touch each other. They actually are bordering on each other and they're protecting each other. And also it's very interesting because you will see root systems that are sitting on the top, interconnected. And I bring to the knowledge that I say, this is what your inside looks like. This is your nervous system. This is your venous system. This is how, and in that is nourishment. And this is what is helping all the resources survive in this tree, and also the roots go a long way away and its resources. And so when people start to realize that, they go, wow, so rich and so much information here that can help us as individuals. So there's so much that we can learn. And what I think about children, for example, because in Singapore, people don't take them out into forests very much, or if they do, it's just sort of they don't really notice. And if families can actually go out and say, we're going to examine what the forest looks like today, and see how playful it is and how exciting and creative it is, and have them learn from it, go, oh, look at that one, or look at this bug here, oh, look at that, so that it then gives them stimulated and thinking about this helps sustainability. Because what would life be if there was not green and forests? And I think that's what Singapore is creating, this garden city in different ways. And it's curated. We like to take people in places which are not completely curated. So that's a little bit uncomfortable, because in the uncomfort, as you know, is the learning, right? And athletes say, I got to get uncomfortable so that I can learn and get better. And that is what we invite people to do without saying, okay, you're going to get uncomfortable. But they're the ones that will say, oh, it's a bit uncomfortable.
Can you share your top spots for being uncomfortable? Because most places that you would go to in Singapore, there is a nice path that has already been created for you, unless you're saying that you would take slightly off the beaten track and you would go into the forest, which is why I guess that's forest bathing.
Oh, yeah. You have to come join us then in our next walk.
What we like to do is to look for a diversity of possibilities. So we look for, is there history in this area? And what does that history look like now that it is all broken down? We also like to look at if there is paving, but it's not completely curated or taken care of, right? And so it's difficult. Well, we will give you one thing. and that is because we don't want too many people to go there, but is Thompson Nature Park. Rarely people know this and will go to it. It's amazing because it's an old Hainan village, which was very, very successful, and it was around very top in rambutans and pork and whichever. But it's now over 50 years. It has now gone back to nature.
Curious to know how many groups or batches have you already brought since COVID for forest bathing?
More than 20.
Since
And how big usually are each group?
what's a good optimum size for you to lead?
So we do it every month, okay, and on the average it's between 15 packs to 20 packs.
Okay.
Of course, if we talk about corporates or our own private groups, we've done that as well. It's been over some hundreds already since.
I come from Canada, so Canada is very much about forest, right? And coming here during COVID, I had no idea I was going to go crazy, and so that's when I found a lot of the walking areas and also the forests and things like that, and that was exciting. That was, I think, the only way I would survive it, and because it gives me more strength and more calmness. And I mean, as a speaker as well, I go into nature and I speak to nature by rehearsing as well. And we all have our ways of doing certain things, or else I go by the water and I'll speak to the water and I'll speak to the birds and things like that, and as my audience, right? And so we find different ways of interventions to help us, and we all are different in that sense. And some people say, okay, when we don't have a forest, what do we do? Well, you can go to a park. You can have greenery around you. In the office, you can bring greenery. As long as you bring something, you can bring pictures, you can journal, you can do grounding, take your shoes off, put your feet on the ground, put your feet. I know you don't like to take your shoes off on the grass, but I mean, but I think now you're starting, right?
I can walk barefoot now on the grass.
Yeah.
I mean, besides forest bathing, we really can't. Other options, we've done nature bathing as well. It was one of our Christmas highlights last year too, because, we don't have that many forests, right? But there's also waters as well. The environment sometimes is stronger than our will. If I'm going to put you at a rubbish dump area and ask you to work there for 3-4 hours, I don't think you can really focus, right? And your energy is going to feel really low. But if I'm going to ask you to just go to the waters, you feel a change in your state right away. And likewise, when you go into the forest, we can't help some people who are just really afraid of insects and worms, and that's really fine. And that's why we offer the option of going to the waters as well. A curated program, of course, that we've done before.
Also, it's not just forest bathing, but there's also nature bathing, which is going to the waters.
By the waters nearby.
Basically nature, biology, right?
Because when we talk about nature, we also talk about nature here, our inner nature, because we are nature and nature. And so we'd like to have that extension and that full circle.
So remember earlier of the podcast, I shared how nature, the forest, is like our inner world, right? Forest is like the lungs of the earth. And likewise, when we do our walks, whether it's coaching time or with children, you can show them, hey, why are some plants more aggressive? Why are there like carnivore kind of plants? And yet there are like the willow trees, which is so gentle. There's a lot of teachings around there that you have to be strong to be that big, strong tree. Can you also be that willow tree that can just shed a light to people? And you don't have to be that big, strong tree. So the many things that we can introduce this to people.
This should be like a mandatory primary school activity. I'm hearing it already.
So I go walk in the forest now with my friends, and last time we were all about work, success, right? And now we've kind of shifted and we started walking, and it's a great activity, besides just playing computer games. But hey, let's go to the nature, get together with your friends, do something different. We have brought tea together, as you walk, enjoy some tea appreciation in the middle of the walk. So there are many things you can do while you enjoy forest bathing, and of course in silence, and open up your 5 senses. So they can go to our IG handle, forestbathing_SG, or you can follow us on LinkedIn as well, where we would periodically share updates about our next forest bathing.
And should they be looking at both of your individual LinkedIn, or you guys have a group LinkedIn?
Yes.
Individual.
Individually as well.
Yeah, but go to our IG, okay, forestbathing_SG.
Okay, we'll put that in the link below.
Yeah, I think that if there is one thing that you could share with our audience listening in, professionals who are in corporate, if they want to kickstart, but they find that 2 hours is a bit too long, where is a good in between for them to start before they really get that courage to sign up for a 2-hour session
Or
or
if
2.5
they don't
session
have
with you?
time to go for
Yeah.
the next one, what is like a little takeaway or tip that they can use to implement for themselves first?
I think, well, not everyone is comfortable. I mean, bearing in mind different age groups, right? In the corporate, some may have some kneecap issues. Mindful of that, some may be pregnant in the walk. It can be as short as maybe just 45 minutes, but simply allowing yourself to be out of the office, allowing that so-called brain detox, right? And gadget detox, and just even sitting at particular area where it's just by the nature or even by the waters. That itself is giving us that space to just be, to just sit and do nothing, if I could say. You know, sometimes it's a luxury to be able to sit and do nothing, right? Some of us, we're taking on 3-4 jobs or have so many commitments, taking care of kids and everything. To be able to do nothing is really a luxury. And we want to offer that, even just half an hour. It doesn't have to be just really walking, but just sitting in the nature itself, enjoying a cup of tea, just smelling your tea, the aroma. That in itself is a good pause time for you. It's like your mini pause retreat.
And may I add that to lower your cortisol, it only takes about 15 minutes in nature. And you start to feel the senses of that. And so it doesn't take a long time. You just need to disconnect from your craziness of the humdrum of the treadmill of life. And you can do that anywhere. And this is all about reflection. You know, during COVID, for example, a lot of people, my coaching clients would say to me, everything is so crazy, all of the hybrid work and we don't know, and all these rules and regulations and all sorts of things. And, we don't see anybody anymore. And they were going crazy. And these were all leaders. And I said, do you take time to reflect? And they said, no. Who has time to reflect? I said, well, this is the biggest problem that you have, is because you have to step back. And you step back every so often to pause. And pausing can be a minute, 30 seconds, whichever. It doesn't have to be, okay, I have to take a focus for an hour or 2 hours. No, you need to step back. And this reflection is so important. So I would say, okay, your coaching session is a reflection session. So let's just reflect on a variety of different aspects. And that is what, we do now. I mean, even with the organizations, by them going to nature with the team is the taking time to reflect. And this is one of the most important things. In fact, the leadership journey I'm on right now with the leaders of a team, and they've asked, they said, on our next session, can we go again to nature, but a different place this time? And I said, wow, sure. It was them that instigated it, not me. But it doesn't, you can just do anything. You can go out and walk and just be alone, but don't have your earpods or don't look at your phone on an ongoing basis, because you're not then spending time with self. And it's hard because we have created this difficulty because of all the external stuff, right? And so you can find it anywhere. And that's why I say anywhere.
So it's this accessibility, right? And 15 minutes is that time that you can actually successfully disconnect to be able to lower cortisol levels.
Actually, I would also add, everyone who knows me says that I'm the busiest person they know. My calendar is I've never ever met anyone with a busier calendar than me, even if they're at CEO or director level. But one thing I've learned, and I'm really starting to see the benefits, I want to think of how to implement it. So while you guys were sharing, my mind was already waiting on how to implement it, even though I don't have time. And one thing I always found that worked for me, especially if any of you guys are super busy corporates, no matter how high you are on the corporate ladder, it's always about thinking how can you kill multiple birds with one stone. So that's why I asked all the children question, because to me it's like, oh, I would spend time with my kids. But instead of bringing them to an indoor playground or something else, now I'll switch that over to forest bathing. Or like, when you said 15 minutes is all it takes, then I was thinking, oh, instead of running in a treadmill in the gym, bring it outside. Yeah, so I think like if you guys are interested in forest bathing and you would like to check them out, head over to forestbathing_SG on Instagram. But if you don't have time and you want to test out the benefits of whatever you've heard on this podcast for yourself first, maybe try out some of these multitasking tips. But the key thing is you said no technology, right?
And I really want to say this. A lot of us think that in order to go fast, we have to keep going or to catch up on what we are missing out or losing or not hitting our targets, whatever it is in corporate, we have to keep going. But what if I tell you actually the magic thing is you have to go slow in order to go fast.
And can I add one more on that is that, you know, when you go into the forest, we have this word busy, right? That everybody's using on an ongoing basis. And I look at people and go, are you really? What does it mean? I mean, people are saying busy even if they're not busy, right? And if you go into the forest, you'll see that the forest is actually busy, but it is at a different tempo. It is also finding different ways to manage that busyness of how we are connecting our resources to each other, how we are doing seasonally changing by dropping our leaves or by our fruit of a fig tree. All of this is being busy. And the animals are always busy. They're looking for something to eat or they're looking for somewhere to go. That could be busy, right? But they do it at a different tempo and they do it with a different intention. And the intention is about, like you were saying, go slow to go fast.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way to wrap up. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, you know where to find them, forestbathing_SG on Instagram. And with that, we'll see you guys in the next episode of Wise and Shine. See you.
Bye.
Bye.